I'm reading from Warleggan, and I'm coming towards the end now of chapter 5 of book 3. Okay, so I guess this is is it part 3 or part 4? I can't remember. Okay, part 3, I think. Part 3, yes, that's it. Alright, so we've just got to the point where Ross has gone to Trenwith and he has climbed in. He's climbed up and he's climbed in and he has encountered Elizabeth. He went towards it and was nearly there when a door opened and Elizabeth came out. She gave a scream, half stifled, stepped back against the wall. They stared at each other. She looked as if she were going to faint. "Ross!" "I came to pay my respects." "Ross! I thought that I was a burglar." "So I am, and to means of entry." She continued to stare at him with great eyes in a white face. She was wearing a green velvet frock, an old one, and in better light shiny, but it suited her. Everything suited her. That was the trouble. "I heard a noise. How did you get in?" "I came to thank you for your letter." "I thought it was Geoffrey Charles. I thought it was strange. Is there somewhere we can talk?" She knew him well enough not to be taken in by his even voice. There was no escape for her now, for this interview. "Yes, I'll get a candle." She turned back to the room she left. Irrationally suspecting that she might be going to call someone, he followed her in and closed the door. This will do. It was her bedroom, and she lifted her hand from the candlestick. "I don't think there's no one else to consider. I want to talk to you, Elizabeth, and now." A nice room, the brown draped curtains hung with a cord, a gilt dressing mirror, the rocking horse, the blue slippers, the white lace nightgown over a chair. He had never been in here before. He could see the blood coming back to her face, to her lips, and some of the confidence. "I so much hated sending you that letter, Ross. The last thing I wanted, as I said. But you can't come in here like this now, in the morning. The morning's too late. I want to know tonight." "To know what?" "What I've already told you in my letter. Is there anything more to say?" "Well, yes." He moved away from the door, pulled off his gloves and dropped them in a chair, came closer to her. She took a step away. "I had a certain impression of how things stood. Tell me, Elizabeth, where I have gone wrong." "George Warleggan I have long thought as my greatest enemy. You I have long thought of as my greatest friend. In which particular am I farthest adrift?" She flushed. "It isn't like that at all, Ross. But it has been a grievous position for me. Of course I'm happy and proud to think of you as my greatest friend." "Well, it was more than that, wasn't it? How long is it? Not more than 12 months since we met one evening at the Trevornances'. What did you tell me over the dinner table then?" "That when you turned me down and married Francis you made a mistake, which you discovered a few months after and have regretted ever since. It was an astonishment, a humiliation to you, you said, that you should have made such a mistake. I remember the words." She stretched out a hand to the back of a chair. "You're coming like this, Ross. The shock has made me feel faint." But he was not to be put off. "That mistake you confessed to, Elizabeth, was one Francis suffered for all his life. And you suffered for it, and I. What sort of a mistake are you making this time?" "No," she said. "What I told you that night, I'll not go back on it, though I should never have spoken if I thought anything was going to happen to Francis. Please, Ross, understand. I felt that some day I had to tell you, to let you know that if you were unhappy in those days, it was not long before I was too. I thought it would please you to know that the mistake had been mine and not yours. It was too late, years too late, to put things right, and I wanted you to know. As soon as I'd spoken, I realized I was wrong to have spoken, and when Francis died, then more than ever. It explains nothing. Where does George Warleggan come into this? Not at all at the time, of course. Only now, much later. He's been so kind, Ross, so good. Do you marry a man out of gratitude? Not alone out of gratitude, but you're far wrong to think of him as your greatest enemy. I believe that I can bring you two together, that truly you can and will be friends. He has no bitterness. Are you marrying him for money? She said nothing for a minute. Her eyes narrowed in an effort to be calm. So far they had faced each other like adversaries, she content or able only to parry each thrust that he made, and with no time or thought for manoeuvre. So far only the situation made the encounter worse than her imagining. She had known how bad it would be, and remembering her expectation of it, she took a grip of herself. She was injuring him, not he her. Therefore she must bear his insults, try to lead him to reasonableness, and perhaps later friendship again. To evade the issue wasn't possible. To give him detailed reasons for her decision to marry George was a waste of time. To give him detailed reasons for her decision to marry George was a waste of time. Each one she put up he would demolish in a moment. Please, Ross. She smiled at him, but avoided the searching look in his eyes. Will you come tomorrow, and we can talk more calmly and more properly than here? Believe me when I say I am not marrying George for his money. I have not been very clever with my life, but I've tried to be loyal to the people I care for. What may seem disloyalty to you isn't really that at all. What would you suggest for me, Ross? 30 years of widowhood and loneliness? I might well live 30 years. Is that what you ask for the mistakes I've already made? Can you offer me anything else to hope for? He was silent, studying the curves of her brow and cheek and mouth. I'll go if you can answer me one thing. Do you love George? The clock struck 11, accenting the other stillnesses. Far in the distance, communicated to an inner ear, was the sound of the sea. Yes, she said. That settled it. He took her by the shoulders, quietly but firmly, so that her eyes flicked up quickly to his in surprise and alarm. This is very similar in posture to the one just after you married Francis. You told me you loved him then, and you didn't mean a word of it. I was simpler then, and believed you. I don't believe you tonight. She tried to free herself. Don't, Ross. You're hurting me. You asked me if I'd condemn you to 30 years of widowhood. The answer's no, but with your looks, you could have the pick of 6 men. I do not like this betrothal to George Warleggan. I ask you to wait a while and to try again. Let me go. I am my own mistress and shall please myself. I'm sorry that you feel like this, but I can't help it. You never have been able to help anything, have you? It has all been beyond your control. All your life you've drifted helplessly down a stream of good intentions. You can't help this either. He kissed her. She turned her face away, but could not get it far enough round to avoid him. When he lifted his head, her eyes were lit with anger. He'd never seen her like this before, and he found pleasure in it. This is contemptible! I shouldn't have believed it of you, to force yourself to insult me when I have no one. I don't like this marriage to George, Elizabeth. I don't like it. I should be glad of your assurance that you'll not go through with it. I'd be surprised if you believed me if I gave it to you. You call me a liar. Well, at least I do not go back on my promises. I love George to destruction, and shall marry him next week. He caught her again, and this time began to kiss her with intense passion, to which anger had given an extra relish. Before anger was lost, her hair began to fall in plaited tangles. She got her hand up to his mouth, and he brushed it away. Then she smacked his face, so he pinioned her arm. She suddenly turned herself for a brief second, nearly free. You treat me like a slut. It's time you were so treated. Let me go, Ross. You're hateful, horrible. If George... Shall you marry him? Don't! I'll scream. Oh, God, Ross, please. whatever you say. I don't think I can believe you now. Isn't that so? Tomorrow. There's no tomorrow, he said. It doesn't come. Life is an illusion. Didn't you know? Let us make the most of the shadows. Ross, you can't intend. Stop! Stop, I tell you! But he took no further notice of the words she spoke. He lifted her in his arms and carried her to the bed. Very dramatic. Good evening.